Welcome back. The plans laid out by President Biden Wednesday night are mammoth in scope. They would touch everything from broadband access to child care and a million things in between. Just as mammoth, though, is the price tag. He then pointed to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell to help ferry the plans along through our very divided Congress. And Congresswoman Dingell is with us from Washington today. Congresswoman, before we get to everything that's going on with the Biden plan, let me start, though, with the announcement that came this week from General Motors, which was your life for decades before working there, before you moved into politics, about investing $1 billion into an electric vehicle plant in Mexico. I don't suppose it's easy for you to criticize your old home, but you seemed furious.
Well, the fact of the matter is I was not given a heads up. I've been in constant negotiations, discussions with the UAW and the environmental organizations, the presidents themselves of these LCV, the Sierra Club, the Environmental Defense Fund, and 8 more have been hands-on involved of how do we protect our environment and protect jobs in this country as well. So the timing was not good. The day after President Biden's speech, it did not have context. It still needs context. And we need to make sure that American taxpayers dollars are spent on American jobs, protecting jobs, creating good paying jobs in this country.
The UAW, yes, not about as upset with it as you were. We'll continue to follow both of those sides of the story. Let's move back then to President Biden's plans. This after a campaign that was largely built on talking about trying to bring the country back together and reaching across the aisle. This plan seems designed to not reach across the aisle. Congressman, you're going to, of course, you already know this, but I think the conservatives are already saying this is exactly big government rung amok trying to do everything.
Actually, Devin, I think you'd be surprised at the number of quiet conversations that are going on. I think there is agreement on we need to fix, to quote our governor, our damn roads and our bridges. I think COVID has shined a light on the disparity in broadband access in rural areas, in urban areas, and that Republicans and Democrats alike, Fred Upton is the lead sponsor with Jim Clyburn on the broadband bill. I think there is real agreement that we need to replace pipes that still have lead in the water. I think that many people, Republicans and Democrats, are concerned about the number of women that have had to leave the workforce. People don't look at themselves as to whether the Republican or Democrat if they can't get child care. I met with women last week that are working 2 jobs and still making less than the equivalent of $15 an hour. And daycare for one costs $16, another $19, and many others couldn't find access at all. These are major issues that we've got to deal with. I talk to my Republican colleagues about them every day. Joe Biden is real about wanting to talk to people on both sides of the aisle. And we're now entering into the time that pen goes to paper and we try to find the common ground.
I saw very few, I don't think I saw any Republicans applaud when he mentioned raising the minimum wage. And I think if Republicans could take a line item veto to these plans, they seem to be finding very little that is what they would describe as infrastructure. You're right about roads and bridges. I think a lot of Republicans agree with you there. But you start talking about the broad scope of this, and it starts to move into a lot of just the same way that they complained about what happened with the COVID relief, that a lot of it didn't seem to be attached to COVID. Now the complaint is a lot of this doesn't really seem to be attached to infrastructure, not as they see it.
So first of all, I'm going to say it's those same Republicans that didn't support it that are out taking credit for many of the provisions that are in there. And you know what? I don't care right now because I want people to get the relief that they need. The Oxford Dictionary definition of infrastructure is systems or processes that helps a country or an organization operate efficiently. All of the issues that are in these bills matter in this country. Coming out of the Great Depression, we got Social Security. And when you hear what people were saying when it first passed, there were some similar comments. And nobody could imagine this country without Social Security now. We came out of World War II and got the GI Bill, which established veterans' health care, helped educate veterans, helped them buy their first homes or buy homes. We're coming out of the pandemic. This has been turned the world upside down in ways that are maybe worse in some ways than previous experiences. It's the time to look at the fractures in our society and where do we work together, being an important word, to address many of these problems.
One of the fractures comes in how to pay for it then. By the time President Trump left office, the federal debt was around $28 trillion. It had grown by $7 to $8 trillion while he was in office. This doesn't seem any way at all to make that less, these plans, no matter how much you decide to tax the rich. Does anybody worry about the deficit and the debt anymore?
Well, first of all, I do. I think some of the things need to be done. But look, we got 55 corporations that didn't pay taxes at all for the last several years, who are using our tax code to get loopholes that allow them to locate overseas. And we got a lot of people that aren't paying their fair share. It's one of the reasons he's investing, putting more money in the IRS to go after people who aren't paying what their taxes should be. And by the way, when you create jobs, good, solid, middle-class jobs, you have a lot of people that are paying taxes into the system. And we've got other programs that we need to look and eliminate waste and fraud. So I think we have to have real discussions, and I want to talk with my Republican colleagues at the table about how we do address revenue issues, but do it in a fair way.
Debbie Dingell, it's always good to have you back on Flashpoint and hopefully in person again here in the very near future instead of across the digital transom. Thanks so much for the time. Good talking to you again.
Thank you. Good talking to you.
You bet. We come back, we'll talk about the semiconductor crisis in the auto industry. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.